Chapter 32 Year 889 PXF Late Autumn. Balanon, seeing their condition, immediately went to work on their cuts, bruises, and, in Thorn's case, broken ribs. The half-elven surgeon worked efficiently and quickly, Osmond demanding that he treat Quentin and Thorn before addressing his own wounds. Osmond's mind replayed the last few days as he waited. Everything that had led them here and everything he could have done differently to have it not end like this. No matter his intent or action, it felt as though destiny planned to see him betray those he cared about most. Everything he had learned through his journey about his father and Talon confirmed the truth of it. They both had been doing everything they could to avoid hurting him, and he repaid them by making their sacrifices harder. Osmond could see that he brought only strife and pain wherever he went, even to Yanri and Thorn when it was the last thing he intended to do. They were to be a new start at happiness and a chance at the life denied to him in his youth. He had almost gotten Yanri killed, and the wounds he inflicted on Thorn were far more indelible than any creature or poison could deliver. Osmond even questioned if he had betrayed Serena. Not only in those final moments when she begged him to save her, but much earlier as well, when she began her plummet into darkness. His first real love had become just as twisted and corrupted as he had made his own fate. The memory of the creature touching his mind returned to Osmond, how it hungered for the misery the vermilion blade left in its wake. Was he so different from that cursed weapon? A voice interrupted Osmond's train of thought.
"Unfortunately, that is beyond my current capabilities,"
Balanon repeated, motioning to his petrified arm. Shaking off his self-loathing, Osmond replied, "I thought as much. I believe the plan is to still head to Oldstone if the returning stone recovers its charge, or we'll find other means. Hopefully the dwarves or Thorn's friend Nazji can revert it, if it's possible at all." Balanon tended Osmond's other wounds, stitching them shut and treating them to ward off infection. As he worked, Osmond looked across the open room to the row of cots where Thorn and Quentin sat across from each other on separate beds. There was an awkwardness between them. Still shaken by the Shadowhound and what it meant, Thorn kept frantically trying to connect with Quentin as though he were Riken. When Quentin would rebuff him, Osmond heard Thorn repeat another variation of, "You don't understand." Osmond could see Thorn desperately needed the comfort of Riken in this moment. He was as shaken as he had ever seen. But that wasn't an excuse to ignore Quentin's words or refuse to accept that he was not Riken. Quentin finally got up and walked away. He descended into the drained pool where Balanon was working on Osmond to see how he was. "How are you doing?" Quentin asked. "I'll live, and I've had worse," Osmond said, nodding his head at the hard, smooth stone of his right arm between them. He looked at Quentin, who leaned against the high treatment table where Osmond was sitting with his legs dangling, opposite where Balanon was still working on his acid-burned palm. It was the first time Osmond really had a chance to get a good look at Quentin. His human soul shone through his visage brightly, but Osmond spotted the signs of his other lineage even beyond the subtle hint of an Uldani curve to his ears. The slight uplift to the corner of his eyes was from Anson, and the shape of his upper lip was identical to Yanri's. He thought the familiar shape of the bridge of Quentin's nose reminded him of his father, but then recognized it as his own. Quentin caught him in his examination. "What is it?" Quentin asked. "Nothing," Osmond said, trying to play it off lightly, but the concern about his influence tainting another life is what truly held his tongue. "No, that was definitely something," Quentin observed. "Do you recognize me? Not the way he does." Quentin's eyes darted over to where Thorn was. "But some other way?" He continued, "I don't look like my mom, I don't look like a Lyrian, I don't fully look like an Uldani or elf. Thorn says I'm Riken, but that me is a dream, not the real world, Quentin said with confusion and frustration, leaning against Osmond's stone arm and then recoiling like he had hurt him. It's okay, Osmond said. It doesn't hurt, and it's plenty sturdy. At least this means it's good for something. Quentin leaned back over on Osmond's statue-like arm. His presence was a balm and perhaps a chance to do things right this time. Look, I don't have all the answers, but I will tell you everything I know, even the parts that are hard to hear. But it's a long story, and we all need some rest first. Osmond gently added, Thorn is in a really bad place right now. I saw what his father did to him, how he used him, violated him. And all of it, everything that he thought was behind him is now back. Parts of it in this very room. He lost Riken due to his father's plans, and now he's afraid he will lose you. Osmond added, He's been trying to find you again for his whole life. Feeling Quentin tense up beside him, Osmond interjected, That doesn't mean you owe him anything. You don't even have to hear his side of things if you don't want to. I'll stand beside you if that's your choice. But here's something I've learned but wish I had known sooner. Osmond paused until Quentin raised his eyes to his own. Thinking of Anson, he said, Life is not a painting. It's a sculpture. You'll never understand it completely unless you change your perspective and see things from all different angles, even the difficult ones. Balanon finished wrapping Osmond's hand, and Osmond reached across his body to pat Quentin's head comfortingly, noting as he leaned on his stony shoulder that even as Quentin, he kept his raven dark hair short in the dagger-cut locks of a blacksmith. I'll try, Quentin said, but no promises, sounding younger than his years. He sat up and looked at Osmond. You know, you are pretty good at this. The beating keel of fatherhood bloomed in Osmond's chest and was not dispelled when Quentin added quickly and awkwardly, You know, this whole rescue thing. Quentin hopped off the table and walked back over to Thorn, who was hunched over on the cot, holding his head in his hands. Quentin laid his hand on Thorn's shoulder and sat down beside him. It is only fitting that you see him as family. He is your child, after all, Balanon said to Osmond. Osmond started at the statement as Balanon continued. I've practiced medicine for 6 centuries, and there is no hiding that your blood flows in his veins. It doesn't matter how it got there, but he's yours. Balanon laid his hand on Osmond's shoulder. Be there for him. Osmond opened his mouth to speak, but Balanon allayed his protests before Osmond said them. On whatever terms the two of you choose. Osmond had slept fitfully, skipping like a stone on a pond between sleep and wakefulness. A tentative shake on his shoulder pulled Osmond out of his doze. Instantly alert, he sat up and felt the weight of his petrified arm pull harshly on the flesh it attached to. Thorn was hovering over him in the dim light of the sanctuary. Further away, Osmond could hear the rhythmic breathing of Quentin a few cots over. I need to talk to you, brother, Thorn whispered, saying the last word as though he was questioning if he could still use that term. Of course, Osmond whispered back. Thorn motioned with his head to the far side of the sanctuary where one of the private alcoves of the old baths still remained. They padded in silence across the room, Thorn leading the way. Within an instant of arriving, Thorn turned and began to speak. I'm sorry, I've been... Thorn stumbled to find his next word. Thorn, Osmond interrupted. No, I should be apologizing to you. I didn't consider all you have been through to be here, to be you. Even before the Hound, what it would mean bringing Talon back. Thorn nodded in acceptance of Osmond's words, then spoke. I have to know. Thorn swallowed hard before he continued. Was it all of him when you brought him back? Was it like the judge? Was a soul there? Thorn's voice quavered as he asked, as though he feared the answer. No, Osmond replied truthfully. Just his body. That's why I knew I could do it. After he died and the chain shattered, you shed the augmented flesh of Talon Vermain that your father had burdened you with. Through the connection with my father, it flowed into me. I just called it forth. It was only me in that body.
Osmond tentatively put his still usable hand on Thorn's shoulder and said,
You've only ever had one soul. Thorn's.
Thorn sighed in relief and said, You didn't let me finish before. I was wrong to be mad at you. You're not responsible for what my father did to me, or the choices your father made that brought Talon's form to you. Osmond began to cut him off, but he continued. I was the one who added my blood to Naz's trap. That my father has it now is on me, not you. Thorn looked across the room to the sleeping form of Quentin. Everything you have done has been to help me get him back, but I need to ask for one thing more. Thorn looked at Osmond and took a deep breath, his body trembling. I need to see him. Thorn's eyes were full of trepidation, but also resolute in the request. I want to see Talon, through my eyes, not in a mirror's reflection through his. Seeing how hard this was for Thorn, Osmond didn't ask for a second confirmation or think twice about the cost. He closed his eyes and felt chains wrapping around him and choking off his breath as he channeled the flesh of Talon Vermain. Osmond opened his eyes and looked down on the relatively diminutive form of Thorn standing before him. Thorn reached up and touched Talon's face. His hand lingered in the hair that was so like his own. Thorn's eyes drifted down to the breastplate of the Knight Captain of Arnador. His fingers traced the embossed crest of Elerion, and found familiar dents and scratches as he became lost in memory. Osmond stayed silent, standing stoically in the borrowed flesh of the man he once knew. Thorn looked up into Osmond's eyes, seeing only Talon, and said, I don't even recognize you anymore as who I was. You truly are a dead part of me. I don't fear you somehow rising within me and eclipsing who I truly am. I'm not you. I never was. Thorn let out a sharp exhale, and relief danced across his face. Osmond, don't ever bring him back again. Osmond dropped the channel instantly, face marred with guilt, still in his stoic stance he had assumed while channeling Talon. Thorn stepped into Osmond, surrounding him with his arms, his breath pumping like a bellows and body still trembling. Osmond slowly returned the hug with his one functioning arm, and then surrendered to it with a stuttered exhale of the breath he had been holding. Thorn gently pulled out of the embrace and studied Osmond's face, then said, You've been defining yourself as a betrayer for so long, brother. To your heritage, your father, to me, and to all those around you. Thorn's eyes searched deep into Osmond's. We all cause pain sometimes, even when we don't mean to. But the joy and happiness you give so freely and bring to all those around you is the reason why you are loved, Osmond. Thorn laid his hand on Osmond's heart. You're not a betrayer, Crodran. You're family. We all are. And you are forgiven.